Alex Merced from alexmerced.com. And what I'm going to talk about is today the importance of cultural buy-in. Regardless of what the role of government is, or what the role of markets and other institutions are, at the end of the day, the culture has to have a buy-in into the institutions that exist. Or it causes all sorts of social unrest because people have a problem with it. So whether it's the way our tax system works, it's the way certain businesses work, the culture has to sort of jive with it. And this is why you see such sort of different arrangements across the world, because cultures are different. And cultures are constantly changing, cultures are constantly evolving. So there does need to be a cultural shift to move to a world where things like lower taxes, lower regulations can have the cultural buy-in to actually exist. So what happens right now, you don't necessarily have a broadly libertarian culture. While you have a lot of broadly libertarian values in a lot of different ways, you don't necessarily have, if you were to poll people and say, hey, should we get rid of most regulations? Should we get rid of most taxes? I'm not sure if you'd get a majority of people saying yes. So if you did just get rid of all taxes and all regulations, you'd have a lot of cultural pushback. And you see that sometimes and you see that in both directions. Whenever institutions evolve in a way, and not just government, could be private institutions, religions, etc. When any kind of institution sort of takes a big move in a direction, more so than the culture of its participants, there always tends to be a backlash. And, people lose their power within those institutions because they try to push things too far. So at the end of the day, someone could have technically unanimous power, and they're not necessarily able to make the changes they want overnight because of cultural concerns. This is sort of this issue with China, where they've been sort of edging along more towards a more capitalist-based society, more market-friendly. And I want to say, as market-friendly as many libertarians would like, but they've done it slowly, inching along, so that way the culture can adapt as they make those changes. And the reason why I'm making this point is because the culture matters. So it's not just about saying, okay, let's advocate for changing these tax rules, these regulations, these rules with the drug laws, etc. We have to sort of advocate a culture of that as well. It doesn't necessarily mean everyone has to have shared values, shared institutions, shared traditions, etc. But sort of a cultural value of things like liberty, a cultural value of private property. Those are values that need to be promoted as sort of something people believe in, not just and value why the belief in it, and see the point of having that value in order to get those sort of broader changes. Because again, even if you did get your magical legislators to sit there and make some of these changes, enforce them, you might have a backlash that won't necessarily achieve what you were trying to achieve. So promoting a more libertarian culture is just as important as promoting a more libertarian policies. And again, a more libertarian culture doesn't necessarily mean no one has their beliefs of things that should or shouldn't be, that they don't have their religious values that sit there and give them an idea of what is right or wrong, or they come up with their own ideas of what's right and wrong. But a libertarian culture in the sense of, what is the government's role? Is there a government role in X, Y, and Z? The value that people should have rights to their property, and they should be able to keep as much of their property as possible, and have little of it as possible confiscated for the purposes of funding a government to do whatever you may deem it necessary to do. Those kind of values, okay? And you'll start seeing a shift in policy much easier because that value will be there. But that requires us to sort of, again, communicate, not just in let's do this policy kind of way. We have to communicate the benefit, the value in it. The value that when you protect private property, when you protect someone else's property, you're protecting your property. Because the fact, if you can tell government not to take someone else's house through civil asset forfeiture, or their funds or their property through civil asset forfeiture, it makes it less likely that they'll take your property through civil asset forfeiture, or through higher taxation, or through something like that. If you sit there and advocate that other people can make decisions about how to use their body, what can they consume, etc., it makes it less likely the government will ever get in the way of you trying to consume something that you want to consume. At the end of the day, protecting the liberty of others, protecting the property of others is protecting your property, protecting your liberty and those of your children's. So getting that message out there, promoting that this type of thought process will help promote that libertarian culture, which will result in sort of a more libertarian institutions, whether those institutions are how governments evolve, religions evolve, businesses evolve, etc. All institutions are constantly changing, reflecting the values of the value and culture of their participants. So at the same time, a more libertarian world can be created by just shaping the values and culture of the participants in the institutions that may necessarily be not super liberty friendly. So my name is Alex Merced from alexmerced.com. Have a great day and enjoy.